And now, your official TigerBait live show with Mike Scarborough starts now.
All right, everybody. Big edition of TigerBait Live tonight. Real excited to have Charles Hanagriff back with us tonight. Of course, local Baton Rouge sports talk staple for 35 years. Got to be plus.
31 anyway.
Yeah. All right. I'm giving you an extra 3 or 4. But yeah, and we got a lot to talk about. Obviously, LSU putting together probably their most complete game of the year against South Alabama. And how do we extrapolate that to how they might go into the open date, with how they come out of it, and what does this mean for Ole Miss in 2 weeks? But welcome in, Charlie. Welcome. What did you think of? What do you think of the season so far? Do you all of a sudden start, revamping what your one-loss predictions are based on the way they performed against South Alabama? I don't know that I am, but there's certainly some positives from that game.
It was good to see you, Mike. I didn't revamp anything because of this game. I thought this game was a good step for them, but I don't know that it makes me feel any different about the other games. I'm not going to get into the rest of their schedule. How are they going to do? Because it changes so much from week to week. I'll tell you like this though: there's not a sure win or a sure loss left on LSU's schedule, in my opinion. I don't think that there's a double. I don't know that there's a double-digit point spread left on LSU's schedule. Maybe by the time Vanderbilt gets here, by the time LSU gets to Alabama, some injuries occur. But I think you clearly got 7 games that could go either way. Obviously, they got a better chance to beat Vanderbilt than they do Alabama. But you get what I'm saying. There's not the game like in 19 when Arkansas was a 35-point underdog, or some of those games where LSU went in Tuscaloosa, a 2 or 3 touchdown underdog. I don't see that kind of game. I think they are a good team. I don't think that they're a great team. I think that they've made some progress from game 1. I think they made some progress in the running game, and I know we're going to talk about Caden Durham. I think that they have been frustrated by the amount of players that they've had to rotate through in the secondary, and that's caused some problems. I think they found some defensive linemen. I think that they not only have they found some new defensive linemen, but they've got some vets that are playing better than they have at any point in their career. I think the offensive line has been a disappointment for the most part in run blocking, but I think they protected Garrett Nussmeier. And there I go burying the lead again. Nussmeier is having a fantastic season. He hasn't made every play, but boy, he's made most of them. And I think the key to what LSU does the rest of the way is they'll go as far as he can take them. He has to play well. He's the one guy on the team that has to play at a very high level. They can't get by with just an okay performance from him.
Well, we talked about it in the post game, and it's really on our post game exactly kind of what you were just saying. You look at the rest of this schedule, and I was talking to a Texas A&M media guy this morning, and Arkansas gave them all they wanted, and they were lucky to get that win. That's not going to be easy in Fayetteville. Certainly at A&M is not going to be easy. Now, looking what Kentucky did to Ole Miss, and now they've got South Carolina, which LSU's already seen and we've seen. I think they're a darn good football team, but it's interesting how we're looking at Ole Miss a bit different now, and I don't know if that's dangerous or not. LSU still has some issues to fix on the back end, but I'm kind of looking at that linebacker core, and without Harold Perkins, I thought that group might have had its best night, but they still got to get their safety situation fixed. Brian Kelly this morning talking about Toviano moving a star, but for the talent they've got there, and there is some youth. I just find it's a head scratcher as to why the safety spot is in the back end is BK calls it is still having their issues, and corner comes and goes, but the defensive front, I don't know much more you can ask for them. I think they've done a pretty darn good job, and they've been coached up a lot better than I thought they would be. And you've got Swinson now and Savion Jones, I think, doing themselves a whole lot of good and going to make themselves some money.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, they found some players. Losing Jacoby and Guillory was just such a blow. But Ahmad Bro was not a player that I had expected would come along this far, this fast. We would have talked about him after spring. We certainly would have talked about him being an interior defensive lineman, and he's just an interior defensive lineman. He's a contributing interior defensive lineman and getting better. I think Gio Paez has been solid. We talk about hits and misses in the transfer portal, and Swinson and Jones are playing the best football of their career. So Kevin Peoples and Bo Davis are earning their money up front. They've done a good job.
Absolutely. All right, let's dive into some questions. We got a lot of people in here already, and as always, if you're enjoying the show, y'all do me a favor and hit that like button. Roger Ramjet is usually up first. Hey, Mike and Hank, always enjoy the show. What's your take on Ole Miss and USC? I'm assuming is it
South Carolina? They play South Carolina this week.
Yeah, yeah.
The big thing there is that Lenora Sellers, is supposed to play, and I think that we saw the difference in South Carolina between when Sellers was a quarterback and when Robbie Ashford was a quarterback. Frankly, Mike, if Sellers plays the second half, I don't think LSU gets out of Columbia with a win, and so that's a big upgrade for South Carolina there. But if we like I said a few minutes ago, I hate to predict out the rest of the season. Here's your cautionary tale: South Carolina, Kentucky, Ole Miss, and Georgia. Now, South Carolina couldn't have looked any worse against Kentucky. Kentucky couldn't have looked any worse against South Carolina. South Carolina lost to LSU, but South Carolina, had that win at Kentucky. Kentucky plays Georgia straight up. Kentucky goes to Ole Miss and it executes the perfect game plan. They kept the ball for 40 minutes. Now, Ole Miss helped out with some defensive penalties, but they kept the ball for 40 minutes, and then they had to make one big play, and they make it on fourth down for a big 63-yard heave. But could the difference in how Georgia played against Kentucky or Alabama be any different, or how South Carolina played against Kentucky or LSU be any different? I mean, Ole Miss, the first 4 games they cruised through. I think that Ole Miss will win a close game in Columbia on Saturday. But, boy, I think it's going to be tough, and I think it really benefits LSU to be off this weekend and have Ole Miss have to go play what I imagine is going to be a real physical football game in Columbia.
Well, here's, and again, let's see how it plays out. But, when LSU lost to USC, and, of course, we're looking at Ole Miss and thinking that they're a juggernaut and it's going to be an uphill battle, particularly the way that we've seen LSU start the season. And now you say, well, now they've got to steal one from Ole Miss to get back on track to meet the expectations, particularly those fans that had the LSU going 10-2 or even 9-3. And so now that game doesn't look to me like a game that you can't get. And so, but I want to see this South Carolina Ole Miss game is going to be very, very interesting.
And I don't think LSU's got to necessarily steal it against Ole Miss. They're a slight underdog in this game, a very slight underdog, about a field goal, maybe 3.5-point underdog. I mean, that is essentially a toss-up game, in my opinion.
Well, when I say steal it, I was saying it thinking that this was the Ole Miss team that was finally going to be the team that breaks out of the Trev Alberts once a runt, always a runt, or there's always a runt in the litter. And they blew it against Kentucky, and I mean they could end up at LSU on a 2-game losing streak. And so just like what was that? What year was that? 2 years ago when Ole Miss came in with that ranking and LSU
they were ranked.
Pulled away in the second half?
I don't remember what they were ranked, but I remember it was 20-0, right, or 17-0 in Tiger Stadium when LSU came roaring back. They've got the misfortune of playing 2 teams back to back coming off of buys. And I think that matters. South Carolina got to rest last week. They got Akron the week before. LSU is off this week. They get them after they got to go to South Carolina. No, I think the order of this is a very big deal. I think it's a very big deal in college football. Last week, Boise played Washington State. I don't think that I think they're pretty much an even team with Boise State. But what was happening? Boise State was coming off of a bye and a game against Portland State, and Washington State was coming off a goal line stance to save the game against Washington, and a double overtime win against San Jose State. What happened? They got tired in the second half, and Boise State broke open a close game. And if South Carolina's got to play 60 full minutes to beat, Ole Miss got to play 60 full minutes to beat South Carolina, I think that LSU can wear them down in the second half and win that game.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into some more. PCG says, what's going on with Jakeem Stewart? Look, he was in Tiger Stadium a couple of weeks ago. That's big. I think LSU's in a very good spot. I like the fact that he's at Edna Carr. You know, we're going to find out on whether he's a midterm grad or an early grad. I haven't gone and dug around again, but I did it a couple of weeks ago. And despite that's his goal to graduate and be a part of the class of 25, no recruiting network has moved his profile from 26 to 25. You know, what does he need? Does he need the spring semester? Does he need does he need summer? And what and how raw are you getting a player, Charlie, when he didn't play his 9th grade year because he was ineligible, got to play his sophomore year. This is his junior year, ineligible. And if he graduates early, he will have played 1 year of high school football and gone straight to college.
I'd say it's a really tough transition. That when you take that much time off from football, it's tough. That being said, I think it's easier to do at a younger age. We've seen some players that didn't even play high school football until their sophomore, junior years. And they come. Wasn't Caleb Jackson like that? He missed a year or so in high school. Missed his last year, I believe.
Caleb Jackson, I was there. His first game of his senior year, hurt his ankle and then missed his whole senior year.
So when you're younger, you can maybe come back a little bit easier. In the pros, I don't think Deshaun Watson has ever fully recovered from taking 2 years off. It's a little bit tougher when you get older, but from everything I hear, he's a tremendous physical prospect. And Mike, the recruiting area is yours. I'll defer to you on that. But I do think from 50,000 feet away, from my viewpoint, it's I'm glad he stayed in state to finish high school. Had he gone out of state, I think it would have made things a lot tougher on LSU.
Yeah, Bryce Brown over at Carr and Frank Wilson have known each other for decades, probably their whole lives. And they're close, and it's much better him being there than IMG Academy or Bishop Gorman. There were all those rumors once he had left St. Aug. So for him to end up at Carr is a great thing. All right. Chance Babbitt, I'm working on this stuff here. We've been working on recruiting all week. I should have something on Thomas and Wiley probably in the next day or two. There's even some basketball stuff tomorrow night, so we're going to see a lot of recruiting this week. Go look at the front page of TigerBait.com right now. We've got individual recruiting stories on every single quarterback that Joe Sloan offered last weekend and in depth, some really good stuff. And so go check that out. Chance bet we may be landing another men's basketball recruit tomorrow. May go 2 for 2 this week. I'm not putting in a prediction for LSU on that one, but we'll see. All right. Yeah, we're live, Eric. Last time you had Hanagriff on, you thought you were live and you weren't. Yeah, last time Charlie was here, he and I were talking for about 20 minutes or so and realized that the live button did not actually go through, and he and I were just having a grand old conversation.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah,
we did 20 minutes of
a really good show.
Yeah, and I was tempted to, yeah, and what was upsetting for me because that was the first time I'd had Charlie on to do it this way, and I was like, Charlie, we're not going to repeat ourselves, but we need to start all over again. All right, here we go. Yeah, no cojones. Kelly's in the house. What's up, TigerBait BFFs? Glad to have you with us. Stephen Miller, non-football. Did y'all see Bregman's tweet? Thank you, Houston. Likely last game played as an Astro. This is in your wheelhouse, Charlie.
Yeah, I didn't see the tweet, but it's been pretty much common knowledge that he's going to be moving on from there. Financial is, I'm sure, what the crux of that is. I'm not following it that close, but I know what Bregman's going to cost, and it's probably not. Apparently, it's not something Houston's willing to pay. So he'll land on his feet, sign a big contract somewhere.
Brad David, why was Kelly so tight-lipped with reporters about injuries? Does that concern you that they could be worse than we know? I'm not worried about anybody. He said Durham's wasn't anything to be concerned about.
Did he say that?
He said that in the post game Saturday night. But
yeah, he said something
what has he
different
said
yesterday. I'm a little concerned. If you're not,
I've heard a couple of dislocated toes. I don't know if it's more than that.
I'm not over the moon greatly concerned, but I am a little bit concerned because if it was nothing, he would have said, well, it's nothing. And he didn't say it was nothing. So I won't go too psychological here with you, but I would have rather, instead of him saying, you're not going to get much out of injuries on me this week, I'd have rather he said, no, it's nothing. He's fine. He didn't say that. So I'm a little bit worried.
But I'm also getting his dry in there because he has said also in previous weeks, I'm because now they're locked into this SEC deal where he doesn't feel like he's got to give it to you until the SEC mandates on the particular days.
Which is fine. That's fine.
But maybe there is more to it.
I hope it's nothing. I really do.
Yep. All right, everybody. Let's we got to pay some bills real quick. And of course, we're brought to you by our title sponsor each and every week. And let's go ahead and hear for our guys over at Pride Roofing.
Hi, I'm Michael with Pride Roofing.
I'm Little Alex.
Have you been affected by wind, hail, and tornadoes on the North Shore? Well, we're here to help.
Insurance claim, no problem.
We also have a new franchise location in New Orleans.
We don't build projects, we build memories.
Though you know Pride Roofing is the official roofer of TigerBait.com.
In fact, notify TigerBait and we'll give you a free roof inspection. And on top of that, you get a free year subscription. Remember to call us at 855-PRIDE-16.
There it is. Give them a call, 855-PRIDE-16. Say TigerBait when you call for your free roof inspection anywhere in South Louisiana, and they're going to pay for you to have TigerBait Premium free for a year. You cannot beat that deal. And little something else that Mike told me to be aware of. If you're in the market for a house or you're selling a house and your roof is over 10 years old, most insurance companies are not going to, closing, you're going to have a problem. They're not going to insure the house unless you replace the roof. And so they've got a deal where you give them $1,000, they'll replace the roof, and you don't pay the balance for the roof until you go to closing and get your check from the buyer. So nobody in Louisiana does that, and Pride Roofing offers that. And you have up to a year to sell your house. So that's an excellent program. All right, this is a good one. Stephen Miller, what's more likely, LSU wins 6 of next 7 or losing 3 of the last 7? Stephen, Charlie, I can tell you a week or so ago, I said that LSU is going to lose 3 of the next 5. And I might reevaluate that, but I might not.
I don't like my choices because I don't think that they're going to win 6 out of 7, but I don't think they're going to lose 3 out of 5 either. I think it's probably somewhere in between that. I think there's probably 2 losses left on the entire schedule. I think they're probably 9-3. Now, if I knew which ones was which, it would be easy to say, well, you're definitely going to win the Vanderbilt game. You're definitely going to win the Florida game. You're definitely going to lose the Alabama game. And then the other 3 games, will be either a 2-1 or a 1-2. But it doesn't work that way. We can do that on paper. We manage to fool ourselves every year. We see one game and we've decided how the rest of the season is going to go, and I just don't think that it works that way. When LSU lost for Las Vegas, they had Jacoby and Guillory and John Emery and Harold Perkins, and now they don't. But now they've got guys playing like Ahmad Bro and Deshaun Spears and Caden Durham that weren't a part of the game plan in week number 1. So things can change, man. If you pin me down, I'd say I think they finished 9-3, but that's just my best guess.
Well, and here's the thing. I was pretty adamant that Ole Miss was a definite loss, almost pinning them in when you see a juggernaut Alabama team most years. And now I don't know how I feel about that game anymore. I'm going the opposite way. So, but I want to see them again this week, and I'm I'm starting to feel a lot better about LSU in that one. So,
that Arkansas game's
right, but it's like
a prime example, Mike. Taylon Green is probably the scariest guy in the league for his team and for the team that he's playing against. I've never seen, I'm not saying I've never seen, but that guy makes a bunch of huge plays and a bunch of bad plays. I could see when LSU goes to Fayetteville, I could see half a dozen different scenarios, good and bad, for LSU, depending on how that guy plays. So,
right. And that's the thing. You can get this win against Ole Miss and you're on your way. And in my mind, you're ahead of, you're back on track or ahead of schedule a bit. But I'm also have a feeling in my gut that there's going to be a faux pas in there that's going to bring you right back. It's a 2-step forward, 1-step back deal, or 1 step forward, 1 step back. All right, let me. Here we go. I got a super chat from Dr. John Sibley Butler. Brock Bowers, Georgia, and O.J. Howard, Bama were legitimate Heisman candidates at tight end. Is this the first time that LSU has ever featured the tight end position? Is Mason in the same class as Bowers? Charlie, what do you think of that? I got into this last week where I was talking about, and you might already say it, that he is now. And of course, you got to tread a little lightly because you're your co-host, Richard Dixon. But now that it's Mason Taylor and he's done what he's done, my thought was the best tight end in LSU history as far as a receiving tight end to this point. I would have said Robert Royal. But then, Dixon's right there as well. But I think when it's all said and done, Mason Taylor's that guy. If you're not already ready to say it right now.
I don't think Taylor will go as high as Bowers in the draft because I don't think he's quite the blocker that Bowers is. So, but I still think he will go very high, but I don't think he'll go as high as Bowers if we're using that as a measuring stick. He just broke Richard Dixon's record for receptions and yards just in the last few weeks. He's still got a ways to go to catch him for touchdowns, but he could do the career touchdowns by a tight end. So Rich had the record book to himself when the season started. So he's right there. LSU, let me see if I can do this, Mike. I think has had one first-round tight end in their history, which was David LaFleur,
right?
Cowboys. And I don't remember another tight end that went in the first round. I can tell you one of my favorites, drawn on another co-host of mine on the post game from back in the day was Alan Richard was on the show with me for years, and he trusted a guy named Malcolm Scott, who was a heck of a tight end for LSU back in the 80s, but not in this class. And of course, they didn't throw the ball nearly as much back then. So
yeah, I mean,
is Taylor the best receiving tight end? He's going to own most, if not all, the records by the time he's finished.
Right, and by saying that, it's not a slight at David LaFleur. He was more of a traditional tight end, and
very different time. David spent, I would say, 90% of his time in line when he was drafted. That was how tight ends played back then, for the most part.
Yep, and so I think that position going forward now is going to. You look at LSU's history, and you start talking about great receiving tight ends. I think it's just now starting to come into play at LSU. Certainly Thaddeus Moss was a big part of the 19 team, but if the offenses keep doing what they're doing, I think the tight ends in this span of time are going to be littered. They're going to litter the whole record book as far as LSU. Just whether it's Pimpton, Trades Green, and anybody coming down the line.
And Taylor's just having, he's had a fabulous career here. He's made big plays. And, Rich is really good about when we point out, we do the film study about what good routes this guy runs. The football IQ is high, which you would expect with his dad and his uncle. And he's just having a phenomenal year. And if you watch closely, they do so much of their motion off of him that when they get into some of these goal line packages, he lines up in the backfield. He's done everything that they've asked of him.
John Sibley Butler, thanks so much for that super chat. Let me get another one. Tiger Mark, good evening, guys. Just want to know y'all's take on Nuss using his legs more. He looked pretty good Saturday. I like it. I like it when he sees an opening and he can, run for 15 yards, get the first down and slide. Don't want him taking any hits. But I always knew he had speed. He's not Jaden Daniels, but he's a little bit faster than Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow can move. So he absolutely can run. He's probably, I don't know if he can get in the 4.6s, maybe, but he's definitely a 4.7 40 guy, which is plenty. That's a devastating part of it. And, I wouldn't mind seeing some design runs or him looking more to run. That's just such a weapon. I mean, you saw what Milroe did Saturday, and in college football, that's devastating.
Mike, what I like about it is that LSU put it on film for other people to see. The quarterback draw at the goal line opened up, like nobody's business. I mean, like the Red Sea had parted there. And by the way, go back and look at that play. Caden Durham gets a great block right at the goal line. I mean, he went in there and laid a lick. And then I love that they went under center for the other play. This means that even if they only run these things once a game or once every other game, teams have to account for it. Richard was talking on the game study. We were talking about how you have to waste practice time on this thing that they may run once every 2 or 3 weeks, but you have to practice against it. And against USC, we were looking at some of those plays where the center of the field was just wide open, where LSU would go to a spread concept, and USC would just bail out of the middle of the field because they had no fear of Nussmeier taking off. And he could have run, 10, 12 yards before anybody got close to him. So I think you have to show the opposition that you've got that club in your bag. You don't have to run it much. Think of it like a naked bootleg down by the goal line. You only got to run that thing once about every 10 times to make people respect it. And that's why I'm glad they put it on tape. I don't want to see him run much, but he's got to run some.
I mean, look, there's going to be times, and of course, now with what we've seen with Durham, I'm a bit more confident of LSU on a 3rd and short to be able to get the first down running the football on a traditional handoff. But before that,
from under center, right?
Yeah. But now it's, of course, when Jaden Daniels there, it could have been 3rd and 13, and I was confident he was going to get it. If he was going to pull it down and take off running, he might take it 60 yards to the house. But until Durham's came on the scene, it's almost been a passing down on 3rd and 1. But I think he needs to do it more if he sees the opening. I don't know that he always looks at it, and surely the LSU coaches don't want him doing it, because you want to talk about injury reports and what it would mean for the rest of the season. You're really recalibrating your 1-loss record if you lose Garrett Nussmeier.
Well, Mike, I tell you, the 3rd and 3 or less stats going into this last game. Now, I forgot to chart them in this game, but the 3rd and 3 or less, they were a 50-50 split pass run, which they've never been that pass dominant on 3rd and 3 or less over the last 8 years, going back to Miles's last season. But they were converting at a much higher rate, more than twice as much with the passes than they were with the runs. So I like the fact that Nussmeier's in play now on these downs. I like the fact that under center is in play on these downs. And if you're not comfortable running Durham up in there because he's got a foot or whatever, Caleb Jackson and Josh Williams are physical backs. They're certainly capable of getting you a yard or 2 on 3rd down if you need it in between the tackles.
By the way, when you talk to Dixon and y'all do this stuff, is he envious of the offense and what the tight ends get to do?
It depends on what year you're talking about. I think, if you remember Richard's sophomore year, the national championship year, Gary Croton was calling the plays. It was before Les had gotten really spooked out of ever throwing the football. They used Richard all kind of ways. In fact, I went back and watched that national championship game film the other day just to go back and refresh my memory. And
on the pregame show, on the pregame show, I said that he was going to have a big game, and he did.
Yeah, the
he
first
made me look like Nostradamus.
The first touchdown that he scored in that game, he scored 2, was on a little pop pass that they never ran after the pick six season. You know, Miles just wouldn't do very much of that stuff anymore. But that 1 year with Croton, he did all kind of creative things with Richard and Flynn, and you know they had a real grasp for it. And then after the 08 season, Les kind of got gun shy about throwing the ball very much.
Yeah. All right, let's get some more in these. Yeah, this was a topic today. I saw that Condon was talking about the anniversary of T-Bob in the Tennessee. Charlie, you were doing the post-game show back in 2010. How angry were the callers at Miles after the Tennessee game?
Furious. You know, the most. It seems like we're doing post-game nostalgia this week. That game, the clock gaff at the Ole Miss game, the national championship game, of course, in 2011 trumps all. And I mentioned this on a Lafayette show that I did. I think the maddest. I was maybe a year in, and I wasn't the host of the post game, but I was assistant on the post game with the interception game at Auburn, and that was obviously there was not only pre-social media, that was pre-internet chat, internet message boards. So everybody that wanted to vent would wait. We could have literally taken calls into the middle of the morning on Sunday after that Auburn game. But yeah, people were furious. I was reminded today of a statement I made on that show, which was that Miles was so disorganized that that LSU would never again beat Alabama while Miles was the coach at LSU and Saban was the coach at Alabama, because Saban was just so much more organized than he was. And of course, I had to eat my words a year later when LSU beat them. So I learned, you know, don't say, or later that year actually, when they beat Alabama. That was the Reuben Randall crossing game, and I had to shut up about that. But no, people were furious. I was aggravated. It just looked like they were completely out of sorts. And T-Bob confirmed. I don't know if you saw T-Bob's tweet. He did a 2-minute basically running play-by-play of what was going on. He said, you know, we're trying to substitute. We didn't have 2 plays called. We ran a running play. We didn't have the substitution ready to go. He said the only reason Tennessee had 13 people on the field was that they were so shocked that we would try something so unorthodox as to try and substitute at that point. He said we shocked them silly, but we never should have done it. Now I remember that post game very well. People were furious, and it just didn't look like Les was going to be able to keep it all together. And of course, in typical Les fashion, he rallied and did. But no, that was a rough day.
Yeah, I said, I don't know if it was the post game or our show last Wednesday, but you know, whether it's Dale Brown or other coaches, over time, you soften on them and their legacy. With Les Miles, as time goes by, I tend to get angrier. I don't give. I'm not willing to give that guy much slack, and I don't know why.
Well,
there's a lot of missed opportunities.
I'll tell you why, Mike. It's because you saw very quickly after he exited, not the year, but what was possible with the offensive talent that they had. And I'm not saying that every year could have been like 2019. That was a special year. But, you know, you watched Odell and Jarvis go to the league, and Bo and Davis go to the league, and you watched all of the success that these guys had, and you're thinking, man, you know, you had multiple first-round receivers, and you had a number 1 quarterback, and you don't want to say you wasted it because they won a lot of games, but it was frustrating because you saw what it could be. I remember very vividly watching the first drive of the 19 season when they were playing Georgia Southern, and they went down in about 2 minutes and scored, and I went, wow, it just feels like you've been released from a bind that you've been in for a long time. So I think that's where the frustration comes in.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. All the TigerBait live shows are proudly brought to you this football season by Stroube Seafood and Steaks, located at 107 3rd Street, downtown Baton Rouge. Stroube's prides itself on providing a 5-star dining experience for a reasonable price, locally owned with ownership right there in the building, taking a high level of pride in the food and service that they provide. And you're not going to get that from any corporate establishment. Stroube's features a full menu of specialty meats, including USDA prime black Angus steaks and 100% certified Wagyu New York strip. And for those looking for something outside of red meat, they offer items such as the dry-aged pork chop, black truffle lobster, pasta, redfish, and much more. Book your reservation online tonight at Stroube's.com, and make sure to let them know that TigerBait sent you in. And by the way, they've got a fantastic dessert menu as well if you've got a sweet tooth like I do. And I tell you what else, Genesis of Lafayette, let's hear from them. There you go. Get over to Genesis of Lafayette. Big LSU fans. A beautiful showroom right there on Johnson Street. Huge LSU fans. Blake Mesh, Salesman of the Year. Jaron Guidry, the sales manager. And for the very best buyer experience of a new luxury SUV or sedan, call them toll-free to set up your test drive at 877-856-2961 and tell them TigerBait sent you in. All right, let me scroll down here. We got a lot of comments today. Dane Bergeron, T-Bob saved Miles' ass and kept him with us longer than he should have been here. I give T-Bob hell for putting us through that. Yeah, I tell the story. Thank you for that super chat, Dana. I tell the story often. That Saturday night when Aleva in 2015, after the A&M win, said that Miles was going to be back for 2016. I'm telling you that basically put me in the fetal position for about 2 weeks. That was awful.
It is interesting though. What he brings up. What if we like to do what if T-Bob doesn't snap the ball and the clock runs out and they lose the game? Do they still beat Alabama later that year? Do they win the Cotton Bowl? Do they even play in the Cotton Bowl? You remember the Cotton Bowl that year was one of the best games of the Miles era. I mean,
that was Tyrann Matthews' coming out party.
They just blasted Texas A&M. Jordan Jefferson had maybe his best game as a Tiger. And I've heard from enough guys that, played on that team that was a springboard into the 11 season, which was phenomenal right up until the end. So that's one of the great what ifs. I know my colleague Hunt Palmer does What If Wednesday. What if T-Bob doesn't snap the ball? Do they beat Alabama? Do they beat A&M? Do they springboard into 11? We'll never know.
What if Drew Brees picks the Dolphins?
The Saints don't have a Super Bowl, but LSU's got more national championships.
Yeah. Jeremy Franks, to this day, Miles is the only head coach who didn't cross the 50-yard line in a national championship game. God, that's awful. And there's a whole lot of players that, protect the brand. But there's a few that'll absolutely tell you about how hard those practices were that week. And when you saw it in pregame and early on, it looked like LSU was a step slower than Alabama. It's because Les Miles ran them into the ground.
I'm sure that I know that was the case a few of those bowl games where they practiced really, really hard, and the game plan was just so stale. There was one. Jarvis Landry was a freshman on that team, I believe, and they had a play into him that they had practiced. They were absolutely sure was going to work, and two of them actually. One of them they never called, and the other one, I think there was a penalty or something like that. It was just, Greg McElroy threw on first down almost exclusively in that first half. It was such a fun season up until that point, but Saban ran rings around him that night.
Preston Guy asked this, a fellow works with TigerBait with me, who is LSU Tennessee postgame show from 2010 available on the internet somewhere? Y'all have archives of any of that stuff? I don't know. With someone like a 3-hour upload?
Yeah, you know what? It may very well be in our computer. I don't think we have archived all the shows back that far on the current website. I did. Somebody asked me that on Twitter, and I'm just kind of holding. I'll make a call tomorrow and see if we've got it somewhere. I know it's not posted right now, but it's possible we could post it if we still have it. We've cleaned out the files more than once since then. So
I'd like to go back. I'd like to go back even further from before Eagle got the contract. I'd like to get in WJBO's archives and hear the bomber calling the Curly Hallman's call.
Oh, jeez. Those were some painful. Those are some painful shows. I worked with Jim Hawthorne a long time, and of course he had the misfortune of having to pilot through those shows. And man, when people would call up and just tell Curly just quit, it's awfully uncomfortable. I can tell you for sure.
Yeah. Tiger Mark, seriously speaking, how many years off do you think we are before we will see better secondary play?
I hope it's not years. I hope that if they narrow this down, the rotation like they're talking about this week, that we'll see some improvement before the end of this year. Now, when I say improvement, you understand, I'm not talking about the 2011 secondary or the 2019 secondary with a whole bunch of pros in it. I'm just talking about being able to play without a lot of busts and stuff. And we're in this film study that we're doing, Mike, what I'm finding is there's as many busts and missed assignments by the secondary on the run plays as there are on the pass plays, hard as that is to believe. And it's not the obvious ones are the two against South Carolina and the one against Nichols, but it's amazing the number of gains that should go for 3 to 5 yards that go for 15 to 25 yards because the safeties take a bad angle or, they miss a tackle or come up and don't play the play with the proper technique. We got one of those plays up on the film study where Wes Weeks actually does a terrific job of getting out to the outside, setting the edge and forcing the play back inside. And there's 2 missed tackles in a play that should go for, like I said, about 3 to 5 yards, ends up going for 15 to 25. And those are the things they got to get fixed. So I hope we see better play from them this year. And then you can speak to some of the recruits that they got coming in, but I would hope they bottomed out on that and they're on the way up.
Well, let me ask you this. When y'all are picking, film and, do you think Deshaun Spears is close, or do you think he's a bit far away?
I think he's okay. I think for Game 5 for a freshman, and I don't even know if he played maybe on special teams in the opener. So I'm fine with where he is for the 4th or 5th game of his college career. He looks the part, and now I'm just looking for reps out of him. No, it's more the upperclassmen that concern me.
Yeah. I think I put a new poll up on TigerBait this morning, and I think this team's 2 years away. But I said, which season will LSU truly be a national title contender? And I put 24, 25, 26. 60% say 2026, which is where I'm at. But I think the defensive back issue it can get solved reasonably quickly, and I think it'll get better as the season goes along. But
I think you just don't have as many dominant man-to-man cover guys as that you're used to around here. I mean, we don't have to go through the list of corners that have gone through here in the past 15 years. They all played in the NFL or still playing in the NFL, and they just don't have those guys right now. I think they can get better with the ones that they've got, and I think there's a couple of potential guys right there. You just mentioned one in Deshaun Spears. But I don't think that's the talent level, the position that the talent level needs to be most upgraded at.
Did LSU obviously tackled better Saturday night? I just knew South Alabama was going to score close to 30 points, and certainly LSU jumping on them the way they did and getting a lead. But that defense performed very well against an offense who put up a lot of points. And I know the competition on South Alabama is what they are, but Appalachian State is typically the class of the Sun Belt. LSU really did a number on them, and they were ready.
You finally got a good start on both sides of the ball. They've had some good starts on offense. The Vegas game, they drive it right down. but this was then the defense allows them to go right back. I thought you had a good start on both sides of the ball in this game, and you contained a quarterback that's got a lot of ability to run. I thought, I thought that they were good in this game. Not perfect, but way better.
Kenny Haynes, stamps equals overmatched.
There's sometimes where he is. If he's your number one corner, and this is kind of what I'm talking about. I don't think Stamps is a bad player, but he's not Derek Stingley. He's not Pat Peterson. He's not Tre'Davious White. And, those guys were elite corners. It didn't matter if you had a Julio Jones on the other side or a Calvin Ridley. You just put these guys on them and you played. And I don't think that, they don't have one of those guys yet. I like P.J. Woodland an awful lot. I like the physicality he plays with. I think, he's going to need some more time in the program to get, physically bigger. He reminds me an awful lot of Rashard Robinson. And if you remember, Rashard showed up at about 165 pounds, but he just wouldn't back down from anybody. And Woodland's got a little bit of that to him. So that's something you can work with. He just, he needs a year in the program before you can really start to reap the benefits of that aggressiveness and, the talent there. But it's not that, like those guys I just mentioned, that's not here right now.
Brad David with a super chat. What is the holdup for the SEC going to 9 games? It's a joke that SEC teams play SWAC schools.
You're going to be shocked by this answer. It's money. The SEC is not going to get off the dime on 9 games until ESPN gives them more money in the contract. When the ACC expanded their contract, expanded their league, it was in their contract that it was X amount of revenue per team, and they could expand teams. Well, the SEC contract doesn't have that in it. It's a certain amount of money no matter how many teams you have, unless ESPN agrees to pay more money for additional inventory. So pay attention to this meeting next week that they're going to have in Nashville between the SEC and the Big Ten. They want to have some type of scheduling partnership that will ensure both of those leagues, at least 4 teams in the playoff every year. But the word is that the Big Ten is not going to agree to that until the SEC levels the playing field with non-conference games. So those are the 2 things that have to happen. If this deal with the Big Ten goes down and the revenue comes from ESPN, most of the league wants to do this, okay? But they're not going to do it for free.
Yeah, I was watching a little bit of Pat Forty with Ross Dellinger earlier, and they were talking about the meeting, and of course, Forty's furious about it and how it's going to crush everybody else. And but let's see how it plays out. I will say this: when they decided to go 8, and then we waited for the schedule to come out. When the schedule came out, look, it's odd to me, particularly at this point. I keep looking at Auburn and thinking, watching them and thinking when the LSU plays them and they're not there on the schedule, that's odd. Couldn't care less about Mississippi State not being on the schedule anymore. But that Auburn game's a little bit different. But overall, I think when the 8-game schedule came out, I think they nailed it. Certainly there's some people that don't like some of their road games, and Oklahoma's first schedule in the league is and a few others. But Missouri's got an easy one. For LSU, what have we been complaining about for decades, Charlie? This schedule this year is the most favorable LSU football schedule I've ever seen.
And the most attractive. When you get Ole Miss, Alabama, and what would have been a top 10 Ole Miss team, what we thought was going to be, plus Alabama and Oklahoma for the first time ever, and UCLA. I know it's not one of their better teams, but they've never been to Tiger Stadium before. Well, that's a pretty attractive home schedule. And, what I hope comes out of this meeting is I do hope the SEC goes to 9 games, and I do hope that there's a partnership between the 2 leagues for scheduling. Mike, I've seen all of the LSU South Alabama games I want to see. And South Alabama's a nice program, but you get nothing out of a win. And I'm talking about as far as the playoff goes. And if you happen to lose one of these games, it really, really hurts you. But mostly, I don't want to see LSU play Nichols. I'm sorry. I just
all right. But if you go to a 9-game SEC schedule, do you still want to have one of these marquee opening games that LSU always plays?
Well, I don't mind having a marquee opening game. I just wish it was, I say, game at the top of the schedule as long as it's second. Okay. In my perfect world, all right, you go to non-conference games, you make a partnership with the Big Ten, and you play 2 power conference games, or whether they be against the Big Ten or maybe the ACC or the Big 12, and then one. I'll deal with one rent-a-win every year. Okay. And if that's an in-state school, that's fine. I don't mind keeping the money here. I'll think of it as an NFL exhibition game. I'm willing to deal with one. I don't want to deal with 3 or 4. It's like an hour's worth of previews for a 90-minute movie. No, I don't want to watch that many of the rent-a-win. So that's my hope. I know we're a long way away from that, but if we do get to the point where it's the Super League, the Big Ten schools, the SEC schools, a handful of schools from the other 2 power conferences, and we call that the National College Football League, and then the rest of the conferences and the rest of the sports go back to their regional roots. I could see that happening too, man. Miami's going to Cal this week, Mike. Okay, I mean, we're talking about 3,300 miles. Is that really necessary to play a conference game?
Right. Right.
Or was Syracuse hosted Stanford? I mean, my goodness, they're closer to, I don't know, they're closer to Acapulco than they are to their conference game. So I'm not for that.
Yeah, where's the Stanford students complain about the carbon footprint of their team going all the way across country to play a football game?
And at least in football, at least you can understand it. What about when the rest of those schools, the rest of those teams, the ones that the gymnastics or the volleyball or the baseball or softball or whatever, and they've got to make multiple trips a week. It gets pretty tough. They are supposed to go to school,
Yeah, yeah. All right, everybody. Capital City Grill, best brunch in Baton Rouge, and as I've always told you guys, we've been hitting it multiple times. This football season, we're proud to add Capital City Grill to our lineup. Located at 100 Lafayette Street, downtown Baton Rouge, Capital City Grill is your ideal lunch and dinner stop for your casual dining experience. Capital City Grill features a variety of sandwiches, burgers, seafood, pasta, and steaks, with almost everything priced at $30 or below for an affordable experience. Don't forget to celebrate a Tigers win at their Sunday morning brunch from 11 to 2. Book your reservation online tonight at capitalcitygrill.net, or make sure to let them know TigerBait didn't sent you in. You don't need a reservation for Capital City Grill. Head on in there. Great lunch spot. And again, a fantastic brunch and the best carrot cake in Baton Rouge. And Alumni Hall. Listen up, Tiger fans. I'm going to tell you the best place to get all your officially licensed LSU gear, and that's at Alumni Hall, your ultimate shopping destination for LSU fans. They've got it all. The new Nike Gear Champion, Johnny O, On Reserve, Peter Millar, Southern Tide, and more. They've got the nice polos that you've been looking for, the nice quarter zip pullovers. We're about to have 60-degree temps next week. You want to get over there and get some of that. Beautiful store, Perkins Row, or shop anytime at alumnihall.com and use the code TigerBait online or in person, and you're going to get 10% off your purchase. And right now, they've got free shipping on all orders over $99, and you can mix and match 2 for $38 Champion brand T-shirts. And they've got tables and tables of gorgeous LSU shirts that you can get 2 for $38. So be sure to use the code TigerBait when you head over there. All right, let's get in here and we'll wrap up here in a little bit. All right. Yeah. Stephen Miller, but at the same time, you have programs like Ohio State playing 3 MAC programs every year. Yeah, I was busting the chops of my buddy that's covered the Buckeyes for a long time about their scheduling. And, for the most part, of course, they'll always say when they've got Notre Dame that counts. But I don't view Notre Dame as them really getting crazy. When are you ever going to see? Of course, LSU did it with them a long time ago. Earl Bruce came in with Ohio State, and
they played a home and home with Texas. They played a home and home with Texas about 6-8 years ago, if I remember right.
Yeah, but when are they ever going to go a home and home with Auburn or LSU or go to Tuscaloosa, right?
Yeah, Notre Dame is a team that they played a number of times. Like they did it home and home with Texas, but they don't have to. Not if they win their not 10, 11 games or 12 games, they're going to be in the playoffs. So if you're Ohio State, I think everybody's waiting to see how the 12 team works out. But for the 2 team and the 4 team, why would they? There's way more downside than upside. If they got through the Big Ten schedule, they'd be there.
Carl the Cat Dunn, Island Handy with a guest spot tonight. Wonderful. Mike, you should do this once a month with different people. Yeah. Buddy takes off here and there. So, and it's always great when we can get Charlie in. Yeah, it's 6:30 on ABC. Ole Miss, 6:30 ABC. That was announced, Monday morning or Sunday?
Yeah.
So what's your think on the A&M game? Is that going to be night or is that going to be a 2:30?
Oh, wow. I'm not looking at – I don't know what the rest of the conference schedule looks like off the top of my head. So I don't know if you got that handy. I'm still learning the little nuances of the new TV contract. We used to have this down cold. We knew what CBS was going to take. We knew what ESPN was going to take. We knew what was going to go to SEC Network. This is a little bit different in that sometimes the best games are going to prime time, like that Alabama-Georgia game this past week. Mike, for the last 20 years, that would have been on at 2:30 in the afternoon. No questions asked. It would have been the first I say unquestionably the first game that CBS would have taken off the board. Maybe Texas-Georgia would have been the first game, but it would have been second. They would have played that game at 9:30, at 2:30. They would have taken one of those other games and made it their doubleheader, primetime doubleheader, like they used to do for Alabama and LSU. So I'm still kind of feeling my way along with this new TV contract and how it ends up. But the one thing I've seen so far is you're going to get more of the best games in prime time, which is good for LSU because they'd rather play night football.
I will say this. I think I didn't see the intro. I was told that they had a little bit more fanfare and it, had the, what a lot of people are complaining about is the 2:30, what's missing with the 2:30. First of all, CBS was always fantastic with their cameras, their camera work. And of course the fanfare, the intro, the game was elevated. Whereas most of the ESPN ABC games all look the same. Now, I didn't see the opening to the Alabama Georgia game. I'm sure it had a little bit more oomph to it, but I think that's what a lot of fans in the SEC are missing right now is that everything on the schedule looks the same. There's nothing that says this is the game. This is the marquee game. And I think everybody thinks it necessarily has to be the 2:30, and it doesn't. Maybe it's going to be with these, Texas and Oklahoma in the league, you're going to have a lot more where you have these huge SEC marquee games, and it becomes a almost commonplace where the Saturday night game is a huge one that draws a big number.
And that's good. I'm kind of on the other side. I think that these big games are getting a build up. The pregame on them is about 15 minutes. If you've noticed, the games that are called 2:30 games are kicking at 2:45 or 2:47. So they're doing their pregame stuff. And look, I know what the big games are. I know when Alabama and Georgia play, it's a big deal, or Texas and Georgia play, it's a big deal. So put those games on at night. I'll find them. I like that better than a 2:30 start for the biggest.
Dane's showing his age with this super chat. ABC has sucked since Keith Jackson and Roone Arledge left.
Well, for a long time they were the only game in town. Mike, I didn't see an LSU football game, physically see one until I was 11 years old. Okay, now we're talking about the early 80s now. Because they just weren't on TV all that often. When I was 7, 8, 9 years old, LSU wasn't very good. The late 70s, there weren't many of those games on TV. I didn't see one until I was 11. And then the whole thing changed in 84 when the TV contracts changed. But, I loved Keith Jackson. I loved Roone Arledge. It's a different game now. It's a different game.
Yeah, what was it? Tiger Vision. What that started? What in 83, 84, somewhere in there?
Somewhere in that area. 82 sticks in my head because that was the Orange Bowl year, but it might have been a year or two before that. You remember who was doing color commentary on that at the beginning?
Greg Bowser at 12 years old.
No, it was Paul Horning. Paul Horning was doing some of the color analysts on some of those early Tiger Vision.
Oh wow!
Games.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And if you look real well, you can find on YouTube now. But for years, that legendary 1979 LSU USC game, it didn't air live, but there is a TV copy. ESPN was doing college football on tape delay at that time. The first time I saw LSU Alabama from '82 when they beat the Bear, the last game against Bryant, the 20-10 game, I didn't see that game live. I listened to it, but I didn't see it live until like Tuesday, if you can imagine that, because ESPN had to put everything on tape delay back then.
I was at that USC game, 12 years old, in the upper deck, the first year of the old West upper deck, the one that had the escalator up the side.
Yeah, yeah.
That was spooky, man. I'm telling you that the pitch of that thing, that was. I can tell you, I was a young guy that was a little spooked by the height of that thing. But all right, Charlie, man, I want to thank you, and I tell you what else. I want you to really pump the handicast that you're doing with Richard Dixon in the breakdowns, and I think people need to go to your YouTube channel and subscribe to that because y'all are doing an excellent job on that. And of course, every day you and Jimmy from 11 to 1.
Well, I appreciate that, Mike. The handicast on YouTube, we made some improvements with the film and the presentation. We're in studio now, so I think you'll enjoy it. Richard Dixon, talk about a football lifer. You know, the game didn't leave him when he hung up his cleats. So he does a great job at breaking down the film, the wide angle, the all 22 that you want to see. And he'll show you some of the things. I've learned a lot in the last 5 weeks watching the film with him. So you go to YouTube and search for Handicast, subscribe, like. We've got all 5 episodes up there. If you watch all 5 episodes, you'll see the improvements that we've made from episode 1 to episode 5. So I hope you like it. And live at lunch 11 to 1 every day. Jimmy and I got the best handicappers in the business, giving you advice on how to play the games. And of course, we're still covering the local teams. So you can get that LouisianaSports.net, live streaming 1045ESPN.com. And and we're on location every day. So come out and see us for lunch.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the name. Chucky, what's the name? It's Handicast, HANNY cast. You'll come right up, and it's growing pretty quick, and I've enjoyed it. And like you said, Richard Dixon and you guys are fantastic. So, man, appreciate you filling in, and we'll do it again soon. And all right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the show, and that was a good one tonight.
Thanks a lot, Mike. I appreciate it. Had a good time.
All right, Charlie. Thank you.